Alright, so we're gonna be looking at our first puzzle here. This is actually a secret room that I was just working on solving, and I was very interested by it, so I decided I'd just jump right into doing a proper recording of it. So since it's a secret room, we're kind of connected by these crumbling walls that kind of hide it off in a corner here. So there's a few elements here, and the one that'll probably look unfamiliar to you is this thing, which is a mimic. You can see it's surrounded by red walls, which means it's not gonna be free until I drop this trapdoor here, so let's go ahead and do that. Hold on. I was pressing 5 instead of 6. Alright, so this thing moves around as I do. You can see it kind of walks around, it looks like me, it swings its sword around just like me. And mimics can be manipulated in their position by pressing them against walls. The opposite doesn't work though. If I press against a wall, it doesn't move forward. So what's the goal of this puzzle here? Well, you can see there's these evil eyes that are looking at these doors here. And so an evil eye, when it sees you, it starts coming towards you like a roach. So you can see when both these doors are down, if it sees me, it'll start coming toward me. And I can't go to it because of this arrow in the way here. So the thing that I gotta do is find a way to make sure it sees me and comes through so that I can stab it. And so this middle button here, this is another new element, but I think it's fairly intuitive. If you press down on the button, it does what it says it does, and if you step off it, it also carries it out. So if it toggles, then it works like this. So this button lowers one door for each eye. Each of these buttons lower one of the doors for just one of the eyes. So if we step on this button here, this eye comes out. We can stab it, so that's good. But now we kind of have a problem. Because how do we press this button here? Well, that's kind of an issue. And if we make a diagonal move, you can see that the mimic, it stabs me a little bit. It slides along the wall, so we can't kind of push it off diagonally. So let's go back a little bit. So the mimic is ignored by the eye. It doesn't try to kill the mimic, so maybe we can kind of like bump it against the eye, or kind of no. We kind of have to trick it into getting into a better position here. Oh yeah, there we go. We got it one. So now we okay, that didn't get us very far. All right. So maybe you're thinking that you gotta get clever with manipulating the eye, and you can play around with it all you want, and trust me, I did try. I got just about every single wrong answer to this puzzle that you can get, pretty much. And you're gonna find that it's not gonna work. You'd have to push it down 3 times, and there's just no way to do that. And this puzzle requires some pretty clever knowledge and kind of background information about the quirks of the behavior of the mimic and the priority system. I'm gonna right-click the mimic again. If you watch close, it's got a number, right? A priority number. So what does that mean? It means the mimic doesn't move at the same time as you. In fact, it moves after you. So let's back up again. So there is a brief time in between my turn and the mimic's turn, in which the Mimic hasn't moved yet. Now, what can we do with that? Well, what if we did this? Oh, now that's interesting. So I'm gonna do that again. I should have checkpointed. I'll checkpoint here so we can go back without having to restart the room. So we look again. So what just happened there? So when I press up, B-throw is gonna step 1 up on the button. Now, if we imagine that we're watching all of the creatures in the room take their turn one at a time instead of instantaneously, the Mimic will be standing on this button here, and then it will step off. But in between the time that I stepped on the button and the Mimic stepped off, the evil eye will see me. That apparently happens immediately anytime that it can see me, so it doesn't have to wait to take its turn, which is something I didn't necessarily know, but I know now. And then all the Mimics will take their turn. This one will step forward, and these two are just going to be chilling because they haven't seen anything. So that's what happens there. So if we do that, if we play around with this a little bit, we can kind of manipulate it, and we can do that again. And we can kind of get this guy. But now we kind of have a problem because, well, how are we going to do this? And you can try playing around with it some. As I have, you might think, well, maybe if we kind of do this, and then we could press the button with the Mimic underneath, and then bump the Mimic to the side with the lower eye, maybe, but you can't quite reach it because you can see we need to be at least 2 spaces apart vertically in order to press these buttons, so we can kind of squish together, and we can't quite reach it. Of course, if the Mimic's too close, you actually bump into it, and it gets really annoying to move around. So there's all kinds of problems with this situation here. It's just not gonna work. Whoops, I went back too far. And this is the key that I was not getting. That I had to look up a hint to finally solve this puzzle on my own. Is that something you probably wouldn't notice, and I didn't notice it after spending like a couple hours on this puzzle. I made a mistake before I even entered this room. What are you talking about here? But you can see I entered the room with my sword pointing up. You're like, why does that matter? I'll tell you why it matters. So watch the Mimic carefully. If I leave this room and I turn my sword around and I go back, well, the Mimic's still pointing its sword north. Well, that's kind of interesting. You're thinking, well, why does that matter? Because I mean, you're just kind of bumping the Mimic on eyes. Why does it? Does it affect that its sword is pointing a different direction from yours? And in fact, I was told this is important, and looking at I do kind of wonder if it's possible to do this a different way. But let's just take a look here. And if you haven't played much Draw, these kind of might be I did mess that up a little bit. It's gonna be kind of subtle because the way things move is in Draw. They have particular quirks to them that you have to be kind of mindful of. So we'll kind of slide it down here, and if I move up, what's gonna happen? Well, I'll take my turn, so B-throw was going to move 1 square up. The Mimic is number 1, and the Evil Eye is number 2. So the Mimic is going to take a step up, but it's blocked by the Eye, so it's not going to go anywhere. And the Eye is going to take its turn, and it's going to move towards me, and that's going to be moving directly west. So it's gonna treat the Mimic sword as a solid obstacle because it's an eye and it doesn't want to run into a sword. So this happens. So what happens if I move up again? Well, again, B-throw takes his turn, he moves up. The Mimic is moving before the evil eye as before. He's gonna bump against it because it's solid, and the evil eye is gonna move up to the northwest. Finally figured out how to get past that sword. It's gonna look like this. Oh, well, look at that. We are now 2 spaces above the mimic. So we can kind of do that. We can kind of do that, although it's not actually necessary, because what you can also do is there's a lot of subtle movement, so I have to backspace a lot to make sure I do it just right. So you can actually kind of get this guy first. And get that. And you can see we got the third eye just fine. Just for kicks, I'm kind of curious now. Is it necessary to have your sword pointing south? Because I actually read that in the hints, and I kind of took it as read that was necessary. But looking at it carefully, I'm not sure that it is. So I'm actually gonna... We gotta have this guy pointing in the right direction. No, I actually don't think that's necessary. So I guess the lesson here is not to necessarily... actually, I messed that up. Not to necessarily blindly trust the hints. So I could have done this without ever figuring out that I needed to think about facing in a different direction here. Kind of interesting. But it does make it a little bit easier to get your sword at the eye. Oops, I killed the mimic. Not really important. And that's how you solve this room. So, that's our first one. I think that went pretty well. And I think this does give us a lot of insight into the really subtle underlying mechanics of the game, and hopefully it wasn't too hard to follow. So I'll see you next time.